exercise the inquisitive mind. Before we begin, I'd call upon Shaykh to recite some Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون بالأوتاد التي كتغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك صوت عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحسنت.
So practicing Islam in the contemporary world. When tackling such a topic, it often throws up more questions than answers. And as the world continues to evolve around us, new challenges and dynamics crop up on a daily basis. Rather than retreating into traditional stagnation, this is an opportunity to see Islam in the contextual and dynamic form that was intended. We are stimulated to relook at the narrations, texts, and tafsir to put things in context with the changing environment that we face. And with this brief preamble, it gives me great pleasure in introducing our two eminent speakers. First of all, Ayatullah Dr. Rahim Nobahar holds the highest degree of Islamic jurisprudence, Ijtihad, from the seminaries Khums, Iran. From 1980 to 2001, he attended religious seminaries in Khums, and in addition, he obtained his PhD in criminal law and criminology from Shaykh Arif University Law School in Tehran. He has 2 degrees from Al-Mahdi University in law and criminal law and criminology. From 1994 to 2000, he taught courses including Islamic law and philosophy of law. He has served as a professor at the Shaykh Arif University in Tehran, and Dr. Nobahar has 7 books and more than 30 academic articles published in Islamic studies. He has served on the boards of and presented at many international and national academic conferences. He founded the International Conference on Human Rights and Dialogue of Civilizations in 2001. Our second speaker needs no introduction. Shaykh Arif, our beloved Shaykh Arif, needs no introduction as he is our much loved and inspirational father figure of the community. As we all know, Shaykh founded the Al-Mahdi Institute in 1993 and is its director. He has been at the forefront of developing the needs of contemporary societies for over 20 years by delivering advanced Islamic studies. Shaykh is famous for his world-renowned, inspirational and thought-provoking lectures across the globe and his long-term commitment for inter- and intra-faith dialogue. He has dedicated encouragement of indigenous expressions of Islam. Shaykh studied at the Madrasa Sayyid in London and also at the AMI in Khums. He attended private training with leading scholars in Khums and also taught a wide spectrum of the traditional Muslim scholarly disciplines in Khums. Shaykh has also studied under Ayatullah. So without further ado, we'll begin with a 5-minute talk by Ayatollah Dr. Rahim Nobahar on practicing Islam in the contemporary world. This will be followed by a 5-minute talk by Shaykh Arif on the same topic. Following this, we'll open up questions to the floor, and you can either stand up and speak out your question or write it down in front of you to the bowl in front of you. Dr. Ayatollah.
I wish I was after you, Shaykh Arif. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody. Thank you for Al-Mahdi. Thank you for all of you who made this beautiful event possible. Just to start, I would like to mention 3 major remarks seems to me important in this context. First of all, the role of practice in faith and Iman. As you know, as a theological question from the beginning, Muslim scholars started talking about the role of practice in faith and Iman, and that what is indeed the relationship between faith and amal and practice. If I wanted to give you a general view about the scene, I'll have to say that we have almost three trends between scholars. Some who was more in favor of a Khawariji approach were of the opinion that practice is a very part of faith, meaning without indeed practice and amal, there would be no Iman. As you know, the takfiri approach the Muslim community nowadays is being involved in has roots in very meaningful and tangible indeed roots in Khawariji approach. You see that they simply label people as unbeliever because of amal, because of something related to amal and practice, and this is a Khawariji approach. Khawarij believe that even committing some of them say committing a big sin, kabira zamb or saghira, some of them would make a person beyond the community of, beyond the realm of Islam. This has been often evaluated as an extremist approach regarding, the role of amal and practice in Iman. On the other hand, we have, on the other side, I can say we have another trend and tendency which believe that, practice has no role at all in faith and Iman. Basically, in Islamic theology, we can mention Murji'ah. Murji'ah are a group of, theologians who believe that, if I wanted to summarize their opinion, I would say amal and practice is nothing. According to them, no one can judge a person based on amal, based on practice. If I wanted to translate their opinion in this context, in this modern context, I would say that, they were very, very liberal indeed theologians. Of course, in Shia tradition, they have been cursed according to some ahadith by our infallible imams because of, belittling the role of amal in faith and Iman. And in the between, we have in both Sunni and Shia tradition a moderate approach in which the practice is important, but still practice has no role in faith as far as practice doesn't lead to denial of any necessary element of the system of belief, like, the unity of God, the day of resurrection, and, of course, prophethood. This is one point I wanted to mention just to open the question and say that, the issue of amal and practice has a long history in Islamic theology. Another point is that the majority of both Sunni and Shi'i theologians are of the opinion that amal and practice in Islam is required by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not for itself but for the for its consequences, which might be either something personal in some cases or something social in another. So the majority are indeed a kind of, mu'tazilate approach. As you know, according to Ash'arite, the whole purpose, the whole aim behind all practices required is nothing but a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala simply wants to test us. Otherwise, there is no maslaha, there is no evil, there is no benefit, no gain behind any amal. This is an Ash'ari approach which is basically rejected. So we do believe that if namaz and salat is required, it is because of, a gain, a benefit behind salat. And if drinking wine, for example, is prohibited, again, because it is because of a detriment within the drinking. This is another point. The third point and my last point here is that in terms of practice, somehow we might defend a kind of consequentialism. By consequentialism, I mean a Muslim, I think, nowadays have to pay attention to the consequences of a practice he or she as a Muslim does. If, for example, I practice in a particular way and at the same time this manner is a cause, is a source for hate against religion in general, then we must be cautious. By consequentialism in this context, I mean this sense of caution and precaution. Just these was 3 points I made for starting. Sorry.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Dr. Nobahar. I'll be very quick and brief so that we can then start the discussions. Islam in essence means submission, and it's God-centric with the single purpose of human growth, individually and collectively. Now, the beauty of Islam as a religion, which is submission when observed through the Quran, is that it can adapt to changing social circumstances, which are an absolute norm of this world. Never does anything remain the same, which affects every walk of human life, from our lifestyle to our transaction to an understanding of human rights. Islam in this way has been most successful over the ages in its expansion, in the ability of Islam to broadly accept other cultures, benefit from them, modify itself according to them, tweak parts of it in accordance with different regions. Because the centrality of Islam is God's centricity. It is more essential, less formalistic. The essential part of it is depicted by the Quranic ambiguity. The Quran is indeed ambiguous. It's the hadith that comes and attaches forms to the essence, and these forms are always fluctuating from one circumstance to another. Now, it's not a question of practice of Islam within the West. The question really is practice of Islam within the contemporary world, given its advancement in technology, its understanding of human rights, its understanding of morality. This impacts the cross-section of human life, from the way we transact and contract, to the way we understand the rights of spouses, of children, to the way we understand life and death matters, or end of life matters, and how we devote ourselves in a context that does not allow for a formalistic devotion that is suggested by fiqh as derived by hadith in a particular context. Again, we find that in the modern world, the paradigms have changed, where the initial form of Islam was developed, the paradigm was the Muslim world, the world that is at peace with Islam, and the world that is the antagonist of Islam. Today we have nation states, no longer is the world divided along religious lines. This inevitably poses challenges to the cross-section of our lives, and the only way Islam succeeds is what it has done throughout the ages, or what theoretically it's been doing, even though it's been in a very limited context, is that it has displayed its flexibility based on the essence. It has been able to rid itself of forms and adapt newer forms. That's it.
Thank you very much. I think we'll begin by opening questions from the floor. So if you have a question, just make yourself known. And you can either ask the question or write it down and come back to the board and we'll read it out. So any comments or questions from the floor? So you mentioned the ability of Islam to tweak and adapt based on regions. Can you give us an example or example?
Yes, of course. So for example, if we were to talk about interest within the contemporary world, there are many forms of interest that are socially friendly and productive. Now Islam does not have this view that interest in essence is a prohibition. The essential facet of interest in Islam is that interest which is socially detrimental and counterproductive to the growth of a human community is something that is essentially prohibited. On the other hand, talk about the issue of end of life. Letting people die is not an abomination within Islam. Letting people die who have a chance to live would be considered abominable. But letting a person die who cannot sustain life by themselves may not constitute that prohibition. But this now only arises in the modern context where we are able to prolong life when a person cannot sustain life by themselves. That's just an example.
Any other questions from the floor?
Particularly with the growth of extremist ideology within Great Britain, in tackling this radicalisation and the extremism, I've come to find in my work that the Shia community in particular have felt it perhaps not a problem that is associated directly or involving them in any way. How can you address this, and how can you actually turn it around? No, actually it is a problem that affects you, because much of the extremism and radicalisation, particularly by the grassroots level groups that are working against this, have directed the causes and effects to the Shia community.
Should I take this first and then I can give it to you? Every Muslim is affected by this. Yes, it would be extremely naive of a group to think that they are excluded by the very brand of being Islam or Muslim. Now, the Shia should not think that they are spared. Why? Because in theory, it is the same Islamic theology that breeds and gives way to extremism. So there is something wrong within the Muslim theology. When I say Muslim theology, I'm talking about interpretation, historical interpretation, yes, of how we've understood theology. And that needs to be challenged. And of course, we can tell the community and awaken them. I was speaking with somebody a few years ago, and he stated that a particular ethnicity amongst the Muslims are at the lowest end of the ladder. So I said, well, it's not our problem. He said, no. They are dragging the rest of us down with them. So now we need to educate them before the whole community can rise once again. So whatever affects the body of the Muslims, we are also affected by it, and we need to tackle it, and we are part and parcel of it. So you're extremely right, it's a question of educating the different sects.
Particularly at Khums level, where there is a clear dichotomy and a dissection between Sunni and Shia. Most of the policy reflects those thoughts and the ideals according to the Sunni method, whereas not reflecting the conclusive of Shia or other marginalized sects.
You see, what I'm saying here is that in principle, the theology enjoyed by the Sunni and the Shia is the same. Yes? They have gone to that extreme, some of them, not all the Sunnis. The Shias have that theology. If not today, there is a possibility for them to tread on the same path in the future. We need to address it at that principal core level. Yes? And we need to say to the whole Muslim body that, look, there's a problem here, and it is our problem, and we need to address it internally. I look forward to a world in which the policies are not distinguishable in terms of the sectarian interpretations.
No.
But I guess following on from that, you mentioned about education. How can that be implemented at a practical level?
Please. You do know that the most effective institution we have right now in our community is the pulpit and the Jummah platform. If the people who are sending the pulpit and who stand at the mihrab are sufficiently educated and enlightened people, they can change the mindset and the outlook of the community within the Shia and the Sunni. As far as the Shia are concerned, they should have no excuse. We have the masses at our mercy. Please. So we have the masses listening to us for full 10 days of Muharram at least, yes? So the Shias do not have any excuse, but the Sunnis also have these platforms. So apart from the intellectual academic debates and scholarly debates conducted within the seminaries and the universities, if our local imams, orators and speakers can be maybe trained better, then we can change the state and maybe bring that enlightenment within the grassroots. Okay. Sure.
So the next question is, what is Islam saying regarding the donation of organs after death?
I can't donate anything. Yes. Nothing is good for me. You answer.
I think the majority of Shi'i fuqaha right now are of the opinion that it is something basically permissible. Maybe before, some used to say that, it is allowed for a non-Muslim body, but not for a Muslim. But alhamdulillah, things after that changed, and a kind of equal treatment to all human being, the body of human being came at the center of the ideas, and right now I can say this is generally something permitted and even something recommended to some extent. Because if someone is quite sure that the person who is in coma, for example, would not be back to the life, and he or she at the same time can save the life of a human being, then why not? However, we have to be careful that the door should not be open for killing elders or those who are in danger of death but didn't pass away still, to make it, an excuse for killing someone and then making someone else alive. So we have, the point is that we should be sure that the donator either has passed away or is almost about to pass away, certainly. In this case, I think this is something recommended and permissible.
During the history, it is always there is people reforming. They try to come with something they believe is to adopt Islam. Some of them using peaceful means, some of them using violent means. My question is how we could draw the line between someone trying to reform or in fact he's doing the opposite, he's doing damage. And what is the rest of society? We understand in Islam, if you know somebody doing wrong and remain silent is crime. If you don't, or even you are to say, well, I'm not affected, so that is against, no. It's really difficult for ordinary people, is these people doing the right thing or the bad thing?
I agree basically that there might be some ambiguity regarding judging behaviors, but basically Quran, who has described himself as Furqan, distinguishing or a criterion for determining things, is not ambiguous. And yes, the point you raised is right, and Quran itself condemning seriously those who are doing bad and at the same time believe that they are doing something right. But what is the criterion? The criterion would be the Quran itself and the Sunnah of the Prophet, and in Shiite tradition, of course, the manners of our infallible Imams. If I wanted to give you an example, look at some behaviors are being done by ISIS, for example, killing people in a very bad way. You hardly can find any trace, any agreement in the Sunnah, in the Quran, with this behavior. However, in the Hadith, you see that in Quran we have the idea of retaliation or qisas. However, it is mentioned that there was a case of retaliation, and then Prophet was, peace be upon him, was the judge of the case. He recommended strongly the relatives of the victim to pardon, to forgive. One time they didn't accept. Then Prophet seconded his request, and again they rejected. And for the third time, after that, Prophet said, okay, no problem, you can make retaliation, but be aware at the same time that you are like a killer. So how one can attribute to such a prophet violence? I was talking to Shaykh Arif this morning that in the time our ancient scholars started writing, collective of narrations, they devoted a considerable part to the issue of tolerance, al-mudara, al-rifq. And it is a very well-known hadith from the Prophet saying that nisfu ad-din al-mudara, the half of deen is tolerance, moderation. I think generally in the religion itself there are very, very clear criteria judging bad behaviors, violent behaviors. Just this day I was reading a hadith from, I think, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, suggesting that if there is a violence and a moderation, and then make sure that the moderate behavior is more consistent with the core and the message and the mission of the religion. Yes, this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, أَفَمَنْ زُيَّنَ سُوءُ عَمَلِهِ فَرَآهُ حَسَنًا. This is the ayah you are pointing out to. Yes, some people are doing bad and at the same time they think that they are doing good. But I think there are some concrete and clear criteria at the same time which makes us able to judge their behaviors.
So the next question I have is, in some countries hijab is not allowed in schools, universities, at work. What does Islam suggest to do in these circumstances?
Dr. Nobahar will follow up with this. You see, of course the fuqaha will say that the first point of call is to do hijrah and to migrate. I don't feel there's any need for that. If it does not allow hijab, then that is their circumstances, and don't wear the hijab in the spaces in which hijab is not allowed, and practice hijab elsewhere where it is allowed. 2, hijab in essence is modesty, not only in covering the hair, but in the full garment. It is also modesty in behavior. Yes? Initially, from the Assyrian society onwards, women were distinguished in terms of respectable women and women who were available. They covered those who were unavailable with sexual or protected sexuality. This then came into Christianity, and slowly, of course, the Syrian Christians would travel to Mecca and whatnot, and it influenced the understanding of hijab within Islam as well, that it is protected sexuality. However, in essence, it's to do with modesty, yes? It's not only covering the hair, it's covering the rest of the body with appropriate garments, proper behavior, proper speech. I'll repeat again, if France does not allow the wearing of hijab in governmental places or schools, then there is no problem. It's not a sin to take off the hijab to the extent to which it is required and to wear it beyond that situation and circumstance. There's no need to go and do hijrah and migrate.
Just from a more technical point of view, I want to add that every obligation, every duty, every responsibility in this religion is connected with power, with ability. So if I am not able to care about something, then I am excused. And of course, as Shaykh Arif mentioned, modesty is very important. I don't think there is any country in the world prohibiting modesty.
So Khums is generally said to be 1/5 of the excess, according to tradition, defined to be savings not used over a year. The figure of a year seems quite arbitrary in the context where people save up for years to make large purchases such as a house, a car, for business or for Hajj. It seems to be arbitrary in the context where people now save for years for things like business, for cars, for houses. So does the annual saving still apply?
I'm just going to go to the essence of the rest. I think the issue of Khums needs to be appreciated and understood afresh fully, yes? The calculation of Khums, the function of Khums, the essence of Khums. All of this needs in the distribution of Khums, needs to be understood afresh. There is an essence to it. As Ayatullah Nobahar will say, his teacher, Ayatullah Muntaziri, was of the opinion that Khums belongs to the head of state and it's a state tax. And it's the prerogative of the head of state to distribute it. Now, all these things of annual saving at the end of the year, the fuqaha say from the hadith that it was in order to create ease for the people. However, within a functioning community where zakat and khums are forms of taxation, you can imagine that khums is seen not as a spiritual tax or a religious tax, but a real functioning human society tax. In which case, if the stipulation is made by the head of state, that look, give it after 1 year and calculate it and so on and so forth, we can have auditors coming in, then that should be perfectly fine. However, the greater debate is, as Agha will maybe point at, that in the contemporary we do have a moral obligation to look after those who are less fortunate in other parts of the world. That is in essence the extent of it, and the distribution of it needs to be debated, needs to be worked out. Two, there is also this understanding, and it is my personal conviction, and I'm sure Agha will give his thoughts, that sometimes we end up paying over 50% taxes in this country. In return, we get roads, hospitals, fire services, protection, education. These are the benefits we derive in return for that tax that we are paying. In this way, the state tax behaves like zakat and khums. Zakat was more as a welfare tax, khums was more as a state tax. But that does not mean that we are absolved of giving in an obligatory manner to other parts of the world or people less fortunate than us. However, what needs to be worked out is how much we give and how we distribute it, what else can be done with that money. In essence, zakat and khums are taxes with a spiritual sort of a dimension that it makes us more godly. Every act in Islam is shrouded with spirituality. In essence, it is there to take care of a functioning community and nothing more than that.
If you take to review Holy Quran, you hardly can see any 2 or 3 pages in which the issue of zakat and salat are not mentioned. There is a beautiful point from Allama Tabatabai mentioning that the word salat in Holy Quran is not confined to what we nowadays name it as salat, I mean daily prayer. Salat in the terminology of Holy Quran has a greater meaning. Similarly, zakat has a wider meaning. Indeed, according to Allama Tabatabai, salat is the manifestation of all types of worships we do in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then zakat are those social responsibilities. Giving the poor is as zakat, or khums is only an example of zakat. Zakat is social responsibility in its wider sense. And as far as Abrahamic faith is concerned, you hardly can find, any authentic religion in which there is no religious alms. As Shaykh Arif mentioned, it is a mistake done by some that they compare religious alms with taxation. I would pay in this country tax, if any, to get some benefits, but I would pay religious alms for the sake of spirituality. You see that in fiqh discussions, it is discussed that if I paid zakat without the real qasdul qurbah, then the question is whether it is sufficient or not. Some says no, it is not enough. It should be repeated with the qasdul qurbah. I heard from Ayatullah al-Uzma Burujardi when talking about the consumers of zakat. As you know, in Ayatul Zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها وفي الرقاب, وamong the subjects are سبيل الله. Ayatullah Burujardi was mentioning that even in making a bridge for the benefit of, I might be not in favor of this idea, but I'm just telling you that how much the point that religious alms should be for the sake of God is concerned. So he was of the opinion that if you make a simple bridge for the society, that might not be enough. That might not be an example of Sabilullah. In Sabilullah, you have to strengthen the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala somehow. You have to support the way of God, the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala somehow. Another point, I think, probably more important than the question and the point Shaykh Arif mentioned, is that sometimes Shi'is are criticized for the fact that the concentration and the focus of Holy Quran is more on zakat rather than khums, and khums is only mentioned in one Quranic verses, which might be interpretable to the booties of the war. This is, I think, a great question. We have to be careful historically that yes, at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, what was common was zakat, but not khums. But later, our infallible Imam found out that the institute of zakat has been misled indeed. An institute which was supposed to serve the community was something at the hand of the illegitimate powers to abuse people, to put pressure on the people, on the Muslim community. Then our infallible Imams, to get rid of this situation, developed the idea of khums. In this country, for example, if you wanted to put zakat on, camels, many people would be free of, paying anything. Generally speaking, I'm saying that for wealthy people, for those who have, for many people, we have to put things together and help them. But we are talking about those people who are wealthy enough to pay. They should pay either zakat or khums. So I see that some people in my country criticizing khums because it is not mentioned in the Holy Quran. And at the same time they don't pay zakat, which is over and over mentioned in Holy Quran. So paying and payment for wealthy people, I think, be it khums or zakat or both, is an inseparable part of this religion, as we can see throughout the Holy Quran.
I'd just like to ask, because the person asked that people say over years, there's a lot of leverage even within the traditional system. By the way, I beg to differ with your points, because Sabilillah does not mean Sabilillah, making a hoza. Sabilillah means something else, yes? So I beg to differ on that. And I think the Prophet came and institutionalized Zakat and Khums for its function. And later on, Imam Sadiq institutionalized Zakat as well, by the way, in the last year of his life. There were Zakat collectors. But for the person who's asked that question about saving for years, now if they are following the traditional system that the Shia fuqaha have, yes, they can make a reference to their fuqaha, and because the faqih, according to the traditional system, sits on the seat of the Prophet had full discretion on Khums, yes? He had full discretion on Khums. So, in theory, the faqih has full discretion in Khums. So the faqih can give that leverage to the individual, as with the case with Sayyid Sistani, in which when people pay Khums, and they say, we need it for this and this cause, he gives them that leverage to say, okay, well, you can utilize it in your own cause. Or you have this whole system in the traditional fiqh that you say to the person, well, I've accepted it theoretically, it's a debt that you owe me. So there are many loopholes within the traditional system that they can explore. If they want to be fully compliant with the marja'iyyat system, then there are ways there. So if a person has been saving for 10 years for a house, then there is a legitimate loophole there that they can explore with their marajas.
Sorry. Yeah. Regarding this particular point, there are many authentic fatwa from the very traditionalist fuqaha, like among them I remember Ayatullah Gulpaygani rahmatullah alayh. If you need to buy a house and at the same time you have to save the money for 10 years, then there is no need for you to pay Khums. Because, and I was studying Kharij al-Khums with Ayatullah Qadiri, and he also was of the same opinion. Because indeed, according to, as you know, according to Ahadith, al-Khums ba'd al-ma'una. This is a very general tradition, well-known tradition in the field of Khums. Al-Khums ba'd al-ma'una. Khums is a responsibility for those who have covered their normal costs. And if a home is among your costs and you have to save it for 10 or more than 10 years, still you are not wealthy enough to pay. And there are many, yes, because we have al-khums ba'd al-ma'una. Khums must be paid after the costs, and then we have the idea of a year in some riwayat. Yes, some fuqaha says, you have to count yearly. But if you are in need, then why should you pay? You can save the money for yourself to cover your need.
Or if everybody, would you agree, after Salah and refreshment, everybody wants to reconvene, then we can?
Is it time for Salat?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But may I just raise a Shaykh Arif, a humble question and a humble request indeed for you. I have no good feeling to be on chair and my brothers and sisters be on the land. Please make an arrangement for our brothers and sisters who come to occasions of this type to be more comfortable. I wonder if we can, arrange. Alhamdulillah, it is a large place. You can put many chairs for everybody to be around and we be on the same page. Thank you if you can do that in future, inshallah.
Why not? This is the first occasion in which anybody is sitting on the floor. They always sit on chairs, to be honest with you. What happened? Because there was going to be namaz, that's why they didn't put chairs, so they don't have to remove it. Yeah. But we can always put chairs here after, if we want to reconvene, I don't know.
Yeah, we can take
Yeah?
in few minutes.
Yeah?
So Councillor Quick, Professor Jamal Fresh will take place here, and for those who are interested, we can perhaps reconvene afterwards.
Okay.
Fine. Say salawat ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala